Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is the Turrfield Ebonies going up against the Pastoria Hydros, and as they have a look at their opening hands for this matchup, let's have a look at this tale of the tape as this is our central point of Season A2 with the last half remaining after this game, and both these sides have a lot going as they've both won 2 games and they've both lost 2 games, so they are both on that tipping point of the top 5. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the grass decks? Will it be the water decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And having flipped heads, going first will be that Flower Paradise deck of the Turrfield Ebonies as they move the Turtwig into that active spot. It will be the Boizel from the Sea Guardians deck going into the active spot for the Pastoria Hydros with that Fion on the bench, and we can see that second Turtwig for the Turrfield Ebonies in hand as well, but they've also got that Pokeball so they can get more basic Pokemon as they do pull the Giant Cape. They've got the Torterra and the Cyrus also in hand. They do pull the Shaman thanks to the Pokeball as well with that Fragrant Flower Garden that can allow them to restore health to any of their Pokemon that have taken damage. They also move the Turtwig onto the bench as the Hydros are going to pull their Irida, and we can see the Floatzel in hand plus that Primplup and Empoleon, but they don't have a Piplup yet. Instead, just going for this Water Gun, getting that 20 damage onto the Turtwig. Now, Turtwig does require 2 energy to get online, but they do pull that Grottle as well. Now, they're not going to use the Grottle just yet, first focusing on that Fragrant Flower Garden to restore the health of the active Turtwig. And they're thinking about where to place this Grottle, and they do go with it on the bench so they can start setting it up again. They've got that Torterra who has done massive damage for the Turrfield Ebonies so far this season. It is an absolute powerhouse with 150 damage from that Frenzy Plant. And there is that Piplup being pulled for the Hydros as Turtwig did just get that Giant Cape as well, and Floatzel, they are thinking of moving that Floatzel, onto the Boizel in the active spot. It doesn't require any more energy for this Water Arrow that does do 30 damage to any of the opponent's Pokemon, so the bench is not even safe, and that includes the Shaman, who is who they are targeting. They want to get that healing property off the board from the Turrfield Ebonies, who have just pulled their Rotom, and the Torterra is online for this Flower Paradise deck, as we can also see that Piplup getting its first energy on the previous turn, but the Rotom is going to go onto the final bench slot for the Ebonies as they continue with this Fragrant Flower Garden that also restores the health of the Shaman itself, which will keep it out of elimination range from that Floatzel. But that is it for the Ebonies on this turn as they send it back over to the Hydros, who do pull the Manaphy, but they are going to get this Primplup online as well. They're looking at the Empoleon, who does require 3 energy, whereas fortunately this Floatzel only requires 1, so it can continue with this Water Arrow, and they continue to focus in on the Shaman. And the Ebonies do pull the X-Speed. It can bring down a retreat cost here, but they're just worried about getting that Torterra set up as much as possible, continuing with the Fragrant Flower Garden. Now, it will not keep Shaman from being eliminated by this Floatzel on the next turn, and that's if that's what they choose to do. They can start targeting other Pokemon if they want, as the Hydros do pull their second Manaphy from the Sea Guardians deck. And they are looking at this Empoleon, who they are going to bring online. It does have that Aqua Jet that does do 30 damage also to one of the bench Pokemon, doing 80 damage to the active Pokemon of the opposing team, which will not be enough to take out the Turtwig, but the Hydros can continue with this Water Arrow, and that is exactly what they're going to do, focusing in onto that Shaman, getting that 30 damage, and Shaman has finally been taken off the board as the Hydros take the first point in this matchup, and it comes back over to the Ebonies, who have just pulled the Rocky Helmet. They can't put it on that active Turtwig as it does have the Giant Cape, but they do put it onto that Torterra, who is 1 energy away from being ready to get online. And with that, the Ebonies do get a first energy onto that Turtwig that is in the active position. Now, it can't retreat because it does require 2 energy to retreat. With that said, if they did play the X-Speed, it would bring it down to only costing 1 energy, but then they would have to give up the one they just put on the Turtwig. As the Hydros pull their second Primplup, they can think about what they want to do. Do they want to start setting up the Fion, who does require 2 energy, getting its first energy here? That Water Pulse does do 40 damage, but it also puts the opposing Pokemon to sleep as they continue with this Water Arrow, and now they're going for the Torterra, and whilst it's on the bench, it's not taking direct damage, so that Rocky Helmet does not come into play, as the second Shaman has been pulled for the Ebonies, and they immediately go with the Fragrant Flower Garden, quite a mouthful, to restore that health of the Torterra. And here it is, the Torterra getting its 4th required energy. They are going to play the X speed, so they're going to retreat the Turtwig. It's only a 1 energy retreat cost, so it gives up the one that's on it to put that Torterra into the active spot, and that Frenzy Plant is going to absolutely obliterate this Floatzel and wipe it off the board. So this way the Turrfield Ebonies can get their first point in this game 1 of this best of 3 series, and regardless of the outcome of our first 2 matchups, as we like to remind, that 3rd game still counts towards our leaderboard, as the Pokeball has been pulled for the Hydros, and it is that 2nd energy onto the Fearon. But now they're playing the Pokeball after getting the energy, and they get the Piplup here. Now they don't have the 2nd Empoleon in hand, but they do have the 2nd Primplup, as they can continue with this Aqua Jet that will target a benched Pokemon as well. And they immediately focus in onto that 2nd Shaman. They don't want that Fragrant Flower Garden in place for this Flower Paradise, but the Rocky Helmet does do 20 damage return to Empoleon. However, the Ebonies cannot go online with another attack from the Torterra. It cannot do that Frenzy Plant in consecutive turns. And this is the hard cost of this Torterra, especially taking so much damage from the Empoleon. They can retreat it, but it is a 4 energy cost, so they just have to give up the 4 energy that are on it. And the Ebonies are backed into a corner at the moment. This will leave the Hydros free to take out this Torterra as they pull their 2nd Empoleon as well, but it is the Primplup getting online on this turn, getting its 1st energy, and the Aqua Jet from Empoleon is going to be successful in taking down the Torterra, but it's who they target on the bench, choosing the Shaman. Thankfully, due to that Fragrant Flower Garden, it is not going to be taken off the board. It still has 10 health remaining, but this is not good for the Turrfield Ebonies right now. The Hydros are in full control in this game 1. They only need 1 more point. The Turtwig coming online for the Ebonies. The Professor's Research has been pulled, so they can get another 2 cards from their deck, and they are going to get the Pokemon Communication and the X Speed. They immediately choose to play the Pokemon Communication as well to see what they can get out of this deck. Shuffling that Rotom, they get the 2nd Torterra. It will not be able to help out here though. And they do get a 2nd energy onto the Turtwig, so it can go for the bite. It's going to do 30 damage to the Empoleon, but that Empoleon is free to just shake this off. It can return the Aqua Jet. Now, it's not enough to take out the Turtwig, but that's not the main focus here. It's that additional 30 damage that it can do to a benched Pokemon. So once again, a Shaman on the bench has been targeted by this Sea Guardians deck, and this will get them the victory here in Game 1. The Pastoria Hydros with the Game 1 win, and they want to try and finish this up in that 2nd game as we have a table reset. And flipping heads, the Hydros will be going first in this game 2 using their Ice Peak Arena deck. It will be the Pollen Puff deck of the Turrfield Ebonies, with that Swinub going into the active spot for the Hydros, the Cherubi for the Ebonies into their active spot. And both these sides have got a Professor's Research in hand at the moment as well. You have to think they will play that immediately, as it is the 2nd Frostlass being pulled for the Hydros. They do get that Professor's Research, so they can get another 2 cards. They get the Snorunt and they get the 2nd Swinub. Swinub? Wonder which one you use. But they do move that Snorunt onto the bench and get the Rocky Helmet onto that active Swinub. But there is not much else they can do unless they want to move that 2nd one onto the bench. We can see the Piloswine as well in hand, but they do send it over to the Ebonies, who get their 2nd Blossom in hand. We can see the Cherum as well, but they play the Professor's Research. They get a Pokeball, they get the Giant Cape, and they've got that Team Rocket Grunt as well, playing the Pokeball, and they are going to get the Oddish. Now, they need the Gloom if they want to get that Blossom online. But the Cherubi does get its 1st energy, and they're having a look as well at the Cherum. It doesn't require any additional energy, and it can confuse the opposing Pokemon. They put the Giant Cape onto the Cherubi. This will offset the Rocky Helmet damage that it's about to take. It gets that 20 onto the Swinub, and there's the Rocky Helmet taking that 20 damage, or that 20 health off of the Cherubi, as the Irida has been pulled for the Hydros, as well as they're looking at how they want to approach this next turn. They do move that 2nd Swinub onto the bench, and I am going back and forth between the Swinub and Swinub during this matchup, as the Frostlass. Sorry, the Snorunt is going to get its 1st energy. Now, do they want to evolve it into a Frostlass? Yes, they do. That Blizzard, though, does require 2 energy, as the Piloswine. They can play that onto the active Swinub, but they choose against it. So the Ebonies pulled their second Professor's Research. They're going to get another 2 cards here. They get the Gloom and they get the Rocky Helmet, and they are immediately going to get that Gloom onto the Oddish. But not just that, it's the Cherrim coming online, and it doesn't require any more energy for that Worry Seed that will do 40 damage to that Swinub. They put the Rocky Helmet onto the Gloom, and the Worry Seed is going to get the first point for the Turrfield Ebonies, taking this Swinub off the board. It is confused, but that is not important here because it is in the discard pile now. Now, is that 20 recoil damage for that Cherrim from the Rocky Helmet as the Frost Slash though? With that Blizzard, it does do 40 damage, but it does also do damage to the Gloom. As the Regice has just been pulled for the Hydras, they immediately move it onto the bench, and they move the Piloswine now onto that bench Swinub. But the second energy onto the Frost Slash, this Blizzard taking 40 health off of the Cherrim and 10 damage onto the Gloom. Again, that Rocky Helmet not coming into play because it's not direct damage to the active Pokemon, and it is the Combee that gets pulled, immediately moved onto the bench for the Ebonies, and the Blossom is online as well for the Ebonies, as now they're starting to set up the Combee, and they are going with the Team Rocket Grunt. They want to try and get the energy off of that Frostlass. They get a heads, they get 2, both energy are going to be taken off of the Frostlass. This is fantastic for the Ebonies, some fantastic coin flips there. They go with the Worry Seed. This will leave the Frostlass confused, and not because it lost its energy either, but it cannot go on the offensive now as the Mamoswine is pulled for the Pastoria Hydras, immediately being moved onto the bench. Now it does require 4 energy for that Frosty Flattening, but it does 120 damage. That Blossom is not safe there on the bench as the second Cherrim has been pulled for the Turrfield Ebonies. That Worry Seed, no, they're going for the retreat. They're moving the Blossom into the active spot. They're going straight for their second point because this Leaf Step will do 80 damage. It is going to wipe this Frostlass off the board, and that is the second point for the Ebonies. 1 more point and they will take this to a game 3 for our decider. Now the Hydros need to think about how they want to approach this. Mamoswine does have 160 health. It would take 2 of those Aqua Steps still to take out the Mamoswine, but there is that Irida in hand for the Hydros who do pull their second Piloswine. Unfortunately, that initial Swinub is in the discard pile. They get a second energy onto the Mamoswine here, and they send it back over to the Ebonies, who pull their second Gloom. Now they haven't got the second Oddish yet, as they're continuing to set up this Combee just in case they pull one of those 2 Vespiquen in the deck. But there's that 80 damage from the Leaf Step onto the Mamoswine, halving its health, and it is the second Mamoswine being pulled, but they do play that Irida that will restore 40 health from the Mamoswine, as it does have a water energy on it. But oddly, they've also put an energy onto the Regice, as the Ebonies have pulled their Vespiquen with that Reckless Charge. 1 more energy and it can do 120 damage. The Mamoswine is not safe, even though they did put that energy on the Regice. That no longer matters because the Reckless Charge is going to take this Mamoswine off the board. It does get 30 recoil damage onto the Vespiquen, but the Ebonies have ensured we are going to a game 3, and they did not drop a point with that Pollen Puff deck either. And once again, the Hydros have flipped heads, so they're going first this time with the Pacific Rim deck up against the Masquerade Ball deck of the Ebonies. We can see that Palkia and the Meryl plus the Tentacle in hand, and they've got the Pokeball plus the Irida to do the Hydros. And they're going through their hand, trying to decide what they want to put into that active spot. Going with the Tentacle, it only requires 1 energy, as does the Tentacle. But the Ebonies, they've got the Sprigatito and the Kricketot. They do go with the Sprigatito in the active spot. Kricketot going on the bench, and they've also got a Pokeball plus a Cyrus. But here we go, our game 3 to determine the winner of this contest. And it is going to be that Lumineon being pulled for the Hydros as well, and they are immediately going to play that Pokeball. Now Lumineon only requires 1 energy. They do get the second Meryl. There are 2 Azumarils in this deck, and they both require 2 energy, but the Palkia goes online, and so does that Meryl. And the Ebonies do pull the Kricketune, playing this Pokeball, getting another basic Pokemon. They get the second Sprigatito. Now it does have that Cry for Help where it will be able to get a grass type card out of this deck when it does go for it. So it's not an offensive move, it is a supporter move, and it gets the Floragato, who does require one more energy. They can get that online in the next turn. The Hydro is pulling the Finneon, fantastic for that Lumineon, immediately moving that onto the bench, filling up their slots, and that Rain Splash can now come online for the Tentacle, doing 10 chip damage to the Sprigatito. Unbeknownst to them, that Floragato is in hand, which is immediately though now online. The Roserade having just been pulled for the Ebonies, the Kricketune also coming online, and there's that second energy allowing this Floragato to go for the slash. 40 damage onto that Tentacle, taking it down to 30 health. One more of those and it is off the board, but the Hydros do pull the Giant Cape and they can get this Lumineon online as well. But they were going to go with the Irida to restore the health of the Tentacle, but instead they just go with the retreat, so that energy is off the Tentacle. That Irida will not affect it, but the Lumineon with the waterfall, 50 damage onto that Floragato. Very impressive there. Switch out from the Hydros as the Ebonies do pull the Rocky Helmet, and they have got that Meowscarada that is now online, and it doesn't require any additional energy, but they do put that Rocky Helmet onto it as well. That will allow them to return 20 damage if Meowscarada takes any damage itself. But here are those Fighting Claws onto the Lumineon as well, although they may be thinking of using that Cyrus if they want to pull the Tentacle into the active spot, and that is exactly what they are going to do. They want that quick, easy first point in this game 3. And the Ebonies are trying to put the Hydros onto the back foot here in this contest. They're trying to get that early win and throw the Hydros off their game, but the Lumineon is brought into that active slot as the second Palkia is pulled for the Hydros. And there is that Palkia getting its first of 3 required energy. That waterfall begins from the Lumineon, 50 damage onto the Meowscarada, but it does do that 20 damage in return as well, bringing Lumineon down to 70 health. The second Roserade being pulled for the Ebonies as they do move the Sprigatito onto the bench. Sprigatito does get its first energy as there's still no Roselia that has been pulled, but they do move the Sprigatito into the active spot. They're going for another Cry for Help, and they are going to get a Floragato in hand as it comes over to the Hydros. They get the Tentacruel, but they no longer have that Tentacle online, so it's no good to them. However, they are going to continue setting up this Palkia. Another 50 damage from this Lumineon onto that Sprigatito. The second Kricketop being pulled for the Ebonies as the Floragato is going to come online. It's only got 40 health remaining though. They need to be conscious of this. They get a second energy onto the Kricketune though. They're going to retreat the Floragato. They don't want to drop a single point. They're going with this Entrancing Melody, which is going to leave this Lumineon confused, potentially preventing it from being able to go on the offensive as it is in that confused state, but it has a 0 retreat cost as the second Tentacruel is pulled for the Hydros. And I apologize, it does not have a 0 retreat cost. It has a single retreat cost, but it's only got 1 energy on it. And they do retreat the Lumineon to go for the Zone Smash. If they flip their heads, it will do 120 damage, and that is exactly what happens, wiping this Kricketune off the board. The Hydros are trying to turn this game on its head. They've just leveled it at 1 point each. The first to 3 will determine our series victor. It is the Meowscarada online for the Ebonies as the second Meowscarada has been pulled as well. Now this active Meowscarada only has 30 health remaining. It cannot outlast a hit from this Palkia, but it gets 60 damage onto it there, bringing it down to 60 health. The Hydros are going to pull the Azumarill. They've had this Meryl online since the early game, and the Azumarill now coming online, getting its first of 2 required energy. The Irida is played. This is going to restore 40 health from the Palkia, and it is able to go for another Zone Smash, but not before it gets the Giant Cape to increase its health by 20. It is back up to 120 health now. This is fantastic for this Pacific Rim deck. They are in full control, and they flip the tails. It's only going to do 60 damage, but that is still enough to get them their second point, and the Ebonies are 1 point away from losing this game. They have that second Meowscarada, but it does require 2 energy. It has no energy on it at the moment. And finally, a Roselia has been pulled for the Ebonies. They are immediately going to get that online. They're having a look at the Roserade. They are limited on what they can do. They leave the Meowscarada in the active spot, getting its first energy here. Sending it over to the Hydros. They pull a Rocky Helmet. They can't get that onto the Palkia. It's already wearing the Giant Cape, but they can still continue to go for these Zone Smashes, trying to maximize their damage. Again, it can do up to 120. The second Palkia is online, getting its first energy as well. And this Zone Smash, it is a coin flip. They need the heads, and they get it. The Hydros 120 damage to wipe this Meowscarada off the board and get the win after dropping game 2. They're able to bring it back in game 3. To this much needed victory that does move them into 3rd place, whereas the Ebonies do stay in 7th, and next round the Ebonies will be going up against the Olivine Raiders, whereas for the Hydros it will be our Champions Game rematch when they go up against the Mellow Rumbles. But until then, Nidorinas, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.